A few months ago, the U.S. Department of Education came up with a plan. They wanted to allocate $50 million to public schools across the country to ramp up security, to beef things up, to prevent the next atrocity from happening in our schools. And folks at the Department of Education also stipulated as part of that $50 million that none of it could be used to buy guns for teachers. Well, time ticks on, as it always does. And Betsy DeVos is now working to kind of get around that loophole in order to make new grants available out of that money so that teachers can go buy a gun to have in their classroom. And this is a gun that they would be given a grant for by the United States government. We, the taxpayers, would be paying for this teacher to have a gun in their classroom so they can protect themselves and the entire school, I guess, the next time somebody comes in and wants to shoot them up. Police officers across the country, teachers across the country, administrators across the country are telling us and have told us every time this is a stupid idea. My wife, I've mentioned this actually guest hosting this show before. My wife is an educator. She's a special education teacher. A few weeks ago, before they went back to school to start this new school year, they had to go through active shooter drills. One of the things, in fact, her school was actually the one that everyone in the county had to come to do this there. Anyway, one of the things that the teachers at this school were told was that if they go on a lockdown because there's an active shooter, they're instructed they have to close your door, lock it, and barricade it, and then get the students in the class into a corner and protect them as best they can. But this is the sick part that's going to make you really cringe here. If any students are left in the hallway, if they start banging on your door, begging to be let in, you can't open your door. There's a violation of policy now. You can't let that child begging for their life into your classroom once you have locked that door in an active shooter drill. How terrifying is that? That's our policy. That is the policy. You have to sit there as an educator and hope that that kid banging on your door isn't the next one to get shot. But that's what we're now telling them. Get in a room, and if you're not in there in the next few seconds, oh well, maybe you should hope that your teacher has a gun on you. And let's talk about the other side of this too, because this is a side I know all too well. Betsy DeVos, again, wants to take money out of this $50 million fund to let teachers buy guns. Teachers can't afford supplies for their rooms. Why aren't you doing anything about that, Betsy? Why aren't you doing anything about that, state governments across the country? The average school teacher here in the United States teaching a public school will spend between $1,200 and $1,500 out of their own pockets every year to buy supplies for their classroom. And I'm not talking about fun stuff, like having a candy jar for kids in elementary school. I'm talking about basic necessity: glue, pens, pencils, paper, tissues, things that their classroom needs in order to operate. Many teachers end up buying their own computers out of their pockets. Oh, and here's the kicker. They just reduced how much teachers can write off on their taxes when they have to spend their own meager salaries on their own supplies. It was cut in half by the recent Republican tax cut plan. So, as I've mentioned, my wife is a teacher. She spends roughly $150 to $200 per month out of her own pocket to buy things for her classroom just so that she can teach. So we can't let teachers get supplies. We don't have any money for that as a country. But damn it, if you want a gun, we're going to get you one. We're going to make sure we get that money available to you, because God forbid groups like the NRA and the gun industry go without profit. That's what it always comes back to. Everything. Look, if there was some kind of nonprofit group making guns, I can promise you this proposal by Betsy DeVos wouldn't even be on the table. But because it benefits a private industry that gives tons of money to her party, she is absolutely going to bend over backwards, find any loophole possible to make these grants available to teachers to use our tax dollars to put a gun in your kid's classroom. How easy would it be? Again, you know, if we're talking about a high schooler, how easy would it be for a larger high school student to overpower a teacher and take that gun away? What happens if the teacher doesn't secure it properly? And suddenly, you create the next mass shooter by giving them the opportunity. More guns equals more death. Any chart you look at where it says the number of guns and the number of deaths, there will always be a correlation. They will always rise together. That's how it goes. And yet here we have the Secretary of Education attempting to actually make that our policy, and make it our policy on the taxpayer's dime. I don't want a penny of my tax dollars going towards any kind of weapon for anyone. Not missiles for Saudi Arabia, not guns for teachers. Maybe that's just me, but I think there's a lot of people in this country who feel the same way. We need to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more on the David Pakman Show.